90% of dudes rapping, they ain't nice as me. 98% ain't live the same type of life as me. The judge gave me life and then they sent me where the life is be. That level 4 with depth and vice, the type of stuff they like to see. Two choices, fight or flee. I refuse to die a chump. I never been a mark, but damn, it's scary when that riot jump. I seen dudes cry, get punked, and some sexually brutalized. Knew a dude who lost his life and he was only doing 5 year-long racial fights when homie all you do is ride. Lonely days and nights up in a hole causing suicide. From the moment you arrive, you see the Mexican mafia. AB skinheads with big giant swastikas. Pro-black philosophers, the BGF, the Kumi, and Muslims who will murk you from the nation to the Sunni. That MS was loony, quick to ride up on they rival. Even Christians went to church, hide knives up in a Bible. Political and tribal, the Crips and Damus, the Long Beach, the Hubs and the Dubs and the Grooves, the IE, the Bakersfield, the Dago Pyrus, the hustlers quick to roll, the gangsters gon' move. Whatever click you choose, you better stick.
Say, what's cracking, YouTube? It's your boy 16 to life, and I'm back like I'm on a parole violation. Guard down. Now today, we're gonna get into this video from Breaking Bread Podcast. Breaking Bread Podcast is a podcast that deals with reformative justice, and they definitely have some good interviews. I'm gonna leave a link in the description. Y'all do me a favor, please go check that out. I know everybody liked the stories about the fights, the riots, the violence in prison and stuff like that. But sometimes it's also bigger issues in prison, man. Sometimes you do actually have people who are wrongly convicted. A lot of times people ask me, how was I able to do 24 years straight California prison system? And one of the deciding factors that helped me do my time, honestly, is knowing that I was 100% guilty. Also accepting that type of ideology that came with being in the streets. Knowing that while I didn't want to go to jail, that going to jail couldn't definitely be a consequences of the choices that I made, and it just comes with the game. It's you got to be willing to accept the same way you give. And to me, that was the determining factor between guys who could and who couldn't make it mentally. Some guys would make excuses for themselves without realizing that, hey man, I put myself in this position. And so, like I said, to me, that was one of the things that helped me do my time. I definitely want you guys to check this out. Because I think of people who sometimes you see people who are wrongly released from prison, and they may get out of prison after 25, 30 years and say they're not angry at nobody, they just happy to be free. Well, I would be the exact opposite. If I was in prison for something that I wouldn't do, something that I didn't do, I definitely would be extremely mad. I'd be upset. I'd be angry, because by me being in prison for so long, I know the things that you experience in prison. I know the things that you lose in prison. You lose valuable relationships, people that you care about. You lose the opportunity to be in the lives of those who are important to you, and also have people that are important to you. You don't get to be in their life. They don't get to be in your life. You don't get to contribute and stuff like that. So for me, had I been innocent, like I say, which I wasn't, I would be extremely angry. I can't see how people get out of prison and they have no anger when they are 100% not guilty and was wrongly convicted. You lose, your parents pass away. You lose relationships, maybe with your children if you have them. It's just so many things that's unfair about a person who's wrongly convicted. But I definitely want you guys to listen to this story, and you make your own decision. Stories, to me, seem like it was definitely some, for lack of a better word coming to my mind right now, some trickeration perpetrated against this dude by court system, and especially the San Jose Police Department. But with that being said, y'all definitely check this video out.
Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
Hello, everyone. I'm Cassie Bordeaux, corresponding for Locked In. Today in our segment Behind Justice, we'll be featuring the case of David Portee, who is an inmate in California, and we'll have interviews with both David himself as well as his sister, Robina Hartwell. In 1981, David Portee was charged with 21 criminal counts stemming from a series of rapes and kidnappings and assaults that occurred in the San Jose, California area at the time. According to one police report, an eyewitness saw David's car and license plate leaving the scene of an attempted kidnapping, and police used this to indict David not only on this charge, but on 20 other charges as well. At trial, the eyewitness identified in the police report testified that he never told police he had seen David's car or license plate leaving the scene, and in fact, he could not make out any license plate at all. The officer who took that initial report, however, did not testify himself, and instead, the prosecution put a different officer to testify in his place, an officer who could not testify to the accuracy of the report because he was not the one who had written it. During a physical lineup of suspects, not a single victim or eyewitness identified David as their perpetrator. Nevertheless, the state of California pushed ahead with prosecuting David with these crimes, and he was ultimately found guilty and sentenced to 2 life sentences plus 22 years, and has been incarcerated 41 years and counting. Although DNA testing was not yet available when David was charged, the judge ordered a semen sample collected from one of the victims to be preserved anyway. Just a few years after that court order was issued, however, the same officers who were originally involved in charging David in the first place went against that court order and had the evidence destroyed in the early 90s. In just the last few months, David received a letter from Santa Clara County Superior Court stating that no arrest warrant for David was ever issued in the first place, effectively making his detainment over the last 41 years illegal. Despite this, the state has not stepped up to help David's wrongful imprisonment. Behind Justice is all about exposing injustice behind justice. Let's get into David's story. So, David, how did you get caught up in these charges?
Well, I was at a mall, and my lady friend had got caught in the mall with a girl's credit card. So they had her in the security thing. So I was in the car. So I went back to get her to see what happened to her. And when I went back to see what happened to her, they had called the police. And when the police got there, they arrested me and her, saying that I had possessed of stolen property. They impounded my car, and they brought us to jail. Next day, the judge let me out, because if I wasn't charged with nothing, I didn't have nothing. I was just going to see what happened to her. But they had impounded my car, had to make it model. That's how they knew what kind of car I had. A month after that, on August the 27th of 1981, is when I got arrested for the charges of the sex offenses and the kidnapping, robbery, and all them. That happened a month after I had got arrested at the Eastridge Mall for the possession of stolen cars.
So the police impounded your car when your girlfriend got in trouble at the mall a month before you were charged with the series of crimes that you were incarcerated for. How long did they have your car impounded?
They had it about maybe a week or two.
So your girlfriend committed a crime. You were thrown into the mix with her, even though you had nothing to do with anything. The police arrested you and your girlfriend, and they impounded your car. And then a month or so later, you were suddenly slapped with 21 criminal charges. What evidence did the state have against you that would even suggest that you were responsible for this series of horrific crimes?
They had a police report that was dated on August the 20th of 1981, stating that they arrived at the scene of a false imprisonment crime at a restaurant, and that they had interviewed a witness named J&I2, who described the suspect and suspect's vehicle and license plate number. That particular officer that took that report said that he ran a registration check on the license plate number. It came up registered on the name of the car. He said he responded to the address that he had received. And when he arrived at the address, he was told that the family living there had moved and it was a black family. He said that on August, I think it was August the 24th, the report said he turned those reports over to a detective. named Sergeant Woodle. Sergeant Woodle is the one that took over the investigation. Once Sergeant Woodle took over the investigation, he said that he received the police report with the license plate number in it. And he took that information from into the district attorney's office on August 26th. He presented that to the district attorney's office, and the district attorney's office filed an 11-count complaint against me, charging me with rape, robbery, kidnapping, false imprisonment, all compilation, and I think a couple other charges, possession of stolen property. He said he took the complaint and he got from the district attorney's office to a magistrate named Judge Thomas, who issued a warrant for my arrest with $100,000 bail.
And at trial, the eyewitness named in the police statement that the police claimed told them he saw your car and license plate leaving the scene testified that he did not tell police that. And in fact, he did not see your license plate leaving the scene, and the car he actually saw did not match your car.
Right, exactly. And I too got on the stand and testified that he never seen my license plate number, and he never told any police officer he'd seen my license plate number. And if they said that and the report said that, that it did not be true. Also, I want to add, if it's all right, that the police officer that submitted that false report never did testify. He never did get on the stand nowhere and say that that's what he received, that he received that information.
So the police had the make and model and license plate number of your car from having impounded it when you were arrested a month before for your girlfriend using a fraudulent credit card at the mall. And they put that information in their police report on this attempted kidnapping outside a restaurant and claimed an eyewitness to the crime gave them this information. And when the eyewitness took the stand and testified that he, in fact, had not given the police this information because he never saw any license plate, the officer who wrote the false report did not testify to his own report and instead had a proxy testify for him so the defense could not impeach him.
Right, he never took the stand, right. So really that was hearsay. See what I'm saying? Another police testified to what he said. And I was trying to understand how they allowed that to go through. I have a right to confront my accuser. He was my accuser.
You said a magistrate issued an arrest warrant for you. At least that is what the police told you when they came to arrest you. They told you they had an arrest warrant for you.
Right. Yeah, so they say a magistrate, Judge Thomas, issued a warrant for my arrest for $100,000 bail. Right? On August 27th, I was at my lady friend's job picking her up from work. And Sergeant Woodle, the same follow-up officer, was waiting for me at her job. And when I got to her job, he arrested me. So when he arrested me, he told me he had a warrant for my arrest for 21 counts of kidnapping, robbery, rape, what have you. I asked him, I said, well, let me see the warrant. And he said, oh, we'll show you the warrant when we get to the station. When we got to the station, he never showed me no warrant. I never seen no warrant. He showed me what I think was a complaint, but he never showed me no warrant. I haven't seen a warrant to this day, 41 years later. I still haven't seen a warrant.
And just a few months ago, the Santa Clara County Superior Court issued a letter stating that no arrest warrant had ever actually been issued for you, making your detainment these last 41 years illegal.
Yeah.
So arrest warrants are supposed to be based on evidence. There's supposed to be enough evidence that someone committed a crime that there's a foundation for issuing an arrest warrant and prosecuting a person in the first place. But if it turns out that no arrest warrant was ever issued, that brings up the question of evidence, or maybe more accurately stated as lack of evidence against you. In your case, they really didn't have any evidence. They just had this falsified police report. The officer who wrote it wasn't willing to get on the stand and defend because it contained lies. And the very eyewitness who claimed they gave him the information testified that the police report contained lies. Is that really all they had? A doctored police statement?
That's all they had. And they had a description that the victims had gave. And the description didn't fit me. So when I went to my arraignment, I asked the judge, I said, Your Honor, they had gave a description of the person. And I don't fit that description. I said, so can you order a physical lineup? And the judge ordered a physical lineup to take place on September 14th of 1981.
And did any of the victims identify you at the lineup?
No, nobody identified me, not even as a possible suspect in the crime.
I'm just so blown away how you got convicted.
I got convicted because they withheld the fact that the license plate number was a false license plate number. The jury never heard that because my lawyer never brought none of that out. In the search, he claimed that he found one of the victims' wallet at my residence. But now, I know that's not true because the incident happened inside of the victim's car. And they searched the victim's car and did fingerprints and all kind of evidence like that, which really gave that same police officer the access to that information. And on top of that, they didn't have no warrant for my residence. They had a warrant for another residence, and then they went to that residence and they told them that it stayed in the back, and then they took that same one and went and made a search. My lawyer raised suppression of the evidence, but it was denied under People versus Childs. They were saying that all the surrounding ground or something to that nature.
So the police, in addition to never having a warrant for your arrest in the first place, falsifying their own statements, then they got a search warrant for the wrong address. And when they discovered they had the wrong address, they just violated your Fourth Amendment right and just walked over to your house using the search warrant issued to the other address, and then conveniently found one of the victim's wallets inside your house, but never dusted it for fingerprints to determine if you had touched the wallet.
Yes. And it's strange how he gonna come up with the exact evidence. No, wait, come on. I mean, this officer, he violated so many laws. I mean, I guess they just really just wanted anybody.
And this was the same officer who lied in the police report?
Yeah.
And the same officer who wouldn't testify to their own police report after the eyewitness came forward and exposed the lie in the report?
Right. Officer Paragon was the officer that didn't testify to the report. Mm-hmm. Sergeant Woodall testified to Officer Paragon's report, stating that the witness had supposed to have seen the license plate number.
And the same officer who did the illegal search.
Yeah.
And the officer who went and illegally searched your residence in violation of the Fourth Amendment, they conveniently found evidence in your house, but they didn't dust the evidence for your fingerprints, which would have shown if you had actually touched the items or if they had been planted.
Yeah, right, yeah.
And that evidence that they found in your house was actually from a carjacking incident that you were charged with as well, but they claimed they couldn't recover fingerprints from the car, although according to the victim's statement, the perpetrator was not wearing gloves, so his fingerprints would have been all over the car and in the car and on that wallet that was later found in your house. But they never lifted any fingerprints off the car or the wallet.
Yeah. It's strange how this perpetrator just had no gloves. It happened inside the victim's car. He supposedly had drove the victim's car. I mean, his fingerprints would have been all over the car. My fingerprints ain't nowhere.
Did they lift any fingerprints from any of the victims or the victim's property?
But they didn't lift it, but they said that they had did a investigation on the victim's vehicle, checking for fingerprints.
But did they find any?
No.
Although your conviction occurred in the early 1980s, when DNA testing was not available like it is today, there was some DNA evidence that was collected from one of the crimes, and a judge ordered that evidence to be preserved. However, 10 years after your conviction, these same officers went around that court order and had the DNA evidence destroyed in 1991. What was the DNA evidence that was ordered to be preserved and then later destroyed by police?
The semen stain was one of the victims' slip from the perpetrator, right? That's the DNA evidence that was destroyed. And that evidence would have proved that it wasn't me. The same officer, Sergeant Derek Woodall, is the one that went behind the court order, and I filed for a DNA test under the Penal Code Section 1405. The judge granted my DNA test. And when he granted my DNA test, he appointed the Innocent Project. And the Innocent Project took the case and went to the police station to receive the DNA evidence. And when they got there, they was told that the evidence was destroyed in 1991. But the Innocent Project told me that since there was no DNA evidence left, that they couldn't take the case, said that they only dealt with DNA. And that being that wasn't no DNA left, our case was nominated to booking. So by it not being no DNA, the DNA was new evidence. So he said, without it being no DNA, there's no new evidence. So therefore, the motion I have filed a motion to of the new trial. I mean, for new trial under those pretenses. And they denied it the day after they appointed counsel. He filed the Wendy brief, saying that DNA there wasn't no more DNA. That there's no new evidence. So therefore, on the 13th something of the Penal Code, he said there's no appeal. It's not appealable.
And were the police ever held accountable for going against the court order and destroying the evidence that would have exonerated you?
No, they never did that. They kept denying me, saying I was unkindly or saying that the police had a right. I couldn't understand how all these judges was just ignoring the law.
So much in your case went wrong, David. How can people help you? What could they do to help you finally get justice?
Well, I just received this letter from the district attorney's office stating that there was no arrest warrant, no affidavit, and there was really no jurisdiction. If I had some help to file, that's newly discovered evidence, but the prosecution has a duty once they discover that evidence was false or some evidence was not received, they have a duty to correct it. I've been to the board 10 times. They continue to deny me because I can't tell them what happened. I wasn't there. Can I tell you, they continue to deny me parole because they want me to talk about something that I can't talk about.
And I think that's a very important point you just brought up, David, and one that I feel like many people may not be aware of. And that is when a person goes up for parole, they are expected to take responsibility for their crime. And that includes talking about their crime, which is an impossible scenario for someone who is innocent. They can't tell the details about something they didn't do. And that is interpreted by the parole board as minimizing or not taking responsibility. And thus innocent people who shouldn't even be in prison to begin with are continually denied parole and the chance for freedom because they simply can't talk about something they didn't do, which is just injustice compounding on injustice.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So I'm in a catch-2, and that's the last thing they told me at my last hearing. Well, Mr. Porter, we're going to commend you on everything, but we need you to work on taking responsibility when you come back. I'm sorry, but that ain't going to happen because I can't tell you what happened. I wasn't there. And the evidence shows I wasn't there, but you don't want to look at that. With that letter from the district attorney's office, I had someone to help me to file, on that, stating that they had no probable cause, no reason to arrest me and no jurisdiction. That would help. They probably would at least give me another hearing, you know what I mean? To investigate this, what I'm saying.
40 years ago, and I didn't hear from my brother. He would keep in touch with us. And then all of a sudden, we wasn't hearing from him. So I was wondering, well, where is he? What happened? What's going on? So I started calling. I called the hospitals. No, he wasn't there. And then finally, I found out that he was in jail. And what they said to me was, oh, he's going to be here a long time. Now, he was just in jail. There was not a trial that took place yet. But already he was condemned as guilty of these whatever charges they had against him. And then they ran off a list of charges they had against him. And from my understanding, he was originally stopped on a traffic violation. And from that, all these other charges was put against him. Now, after that, I asked David, why didn't you call us right away when they arrested you? He said, well, I didn't think I was going to be here. I was only stopped on a traffic violation, and all of a sudden had all these other charges against him. But they never got any witnesses to accuse him and say he was the one. No one ever did that. He would never say that he was guilty. He always said he was innocent. And if you don't claim you are guilty, if you don't admit to you are guilty, you will get a longer sentence if you could say you're innocent. And for 40 years, he still sticks to the fact that he is innocent, that he did not do this. My mother, she tried to get an attorney, and I remember she had to give him some kind of fee so he would look into the case, a retainer or whatever. No result, no help. And we wrote the governor, no letter, no reply back. You know, and so it's really discouraging to know he's not even in there for murder. And he can't get out. Since David's been in there, my father passed. They wouldn't let him out to come to my dad's funeral. My mother has passed, my sister. And I'm just praying and hoping David will come home. 40 years. And yet he's in his right state of mind, and he's not bitter. He's still holding on, hoping to get out one day. And we're hoping that he can get out. He has a place to go. He got a letter, I believe, from the county of Santa Clara. And it was talking about they could not find an arrest warrant for him.
Yeah, I did see that letter. And that is probably one of the most shocking things I think I have ever seen. Over 40 years ago, police lied to David about having an arrest warrant for him. They arrested him. They charged him. The police lied in their own police statements. David was convicted based on their lies. And then when he had a chance to prove his innocence years later, police destroyed the evidence that would have exonerated him against a court order. And now the state is finally admitting that they had no basis to arrest him in the first place. And although they're admitting this, they're not stepping up to help him, despite the fact that they technically have an obligation to end the nightmare they created for David and your family over 40 years ago.
What is his next step? What do we do? How do we get him released? So it just seems like once you're in there, you're their property. You're not getting out, you know? So I don't know what to say, but to just continue to, keep the faith, hold on, that one day he will be released. One day I'll see my brother again. Because, I'm sure there's a lot of people in there who should be in there, but there are also people who should not be in there. People who are innocent.
And at one point in the early 2000s, the California Innocence Project had taken up David's case because there had been DNA evidence that was ordered to be preserved. But when they went to get the DNA evidence in order to test it, that was when it was discovered that the evidence had been destroyed in 1991. And because of this, the Innocence Project had to withdraw from helping David.
And why would you destroy something that's supposed to be evident or something that can clear a case up? It's awful to know how the system is. Like, how do you get real justice?
Robina, I just want to thank you for speaking with me and for being such a strong advocate for your brother David for the last 41 years that he has been wrongfully incarcerated. And in our last few minutes, is there anything else you'd like to say that you feel we haven't covered?
Well, I just want to say I appreciate anybody listening out there who may have someone in their family or who have dealt with this and can sympathize that this is real. This is real. There's real people who go through these kinds of situations where it seems like there's no hope. He does not deserve to be incarcerated for 40 years for something he did not do. And I just want to thank you for having a platform to be able to speak out. And then I just hope more people see this and something can be done.
Again, I am your host, Cassie Bordeaux, corresponding for Locked In, and that was our story on David Portee, who in the early 1980s was convicted of 21 counts of kidnapping, rape, robbery, and assault for a series of crimes that occurred in the San Jose, California area, and whose conviction was based on falsified police reports and exonerating evidence that was destroyed by police against a court order to preserve it. Just a few months ago, it was also discovered that no arrest warrant or affidavit was ever issued for David in the first place, effectively making his incarceration these last 41 years illegal. David is seeking legal help to finally get justice he has been denied for over 4 decades and welcomes anyone who may be able to help him to reach out to him at the address provided. Thank you.